Why are there so many shows starring Muppets and dozens of movies too? They said they'd watch everyone and they mean it. It's something that they've got to do. So now they've pledged you a lifelong commitment. The Muppets, Matthew and Sam.
Welcome to Commitment, the podcast where two friends have vowed to watch all things Muppets. I'm Matthew Gatos.
And I'm Sam Schultz.
And this week, we watched about 50 Muppet meeting films that were produced between 1965 and 1993. It was just about over 2 hours of these internal businessy corporate world type of content that the outside world is not meant to see. And we also watched a short little clip from Entertainment Tonight, Entertainment This Week, some sort of show named something like that, where they do a sort of behind-the-scenes look at some of these Muppet meeting films. But before we get too far into what we're discussing this week, I just wanted to ask Sam, and I'm sure we'll talk about this a lot more as we go on, but we're doing in this Unstuck in Time episode. What did it feel like to be watching our first post-Jim Henson death content?
It was discombobulating. I don't think I'm actually even equipped to be able to tell if they were good or not, because it was just so... It's like, the weirder part is being aware of it, I think. Of he had just died the year before some of these were made. Mm-hmm. Is that right? 91 is when he died?
Yeah, he died, I think, a year or two before some of them were being produced.
The weight of his absence makes these hard to because I think immediately my gut reaction is just well, these certainly can't be as good. And they are different in a way that I want to talk about eventually. I can't quite figure out what the difference is.
Yeah, it's like a switch
some different
flips.
Energy there. Mm-hmm.
Something changes in a way that I think is recognizable in other 90s Muppet content like Muppets Tonight.
Definitely.
But I think we'll, as we get through doing this podcast, as we get towards that era, I think we'll be able to maybe understand it a little bit more. But seeing it in this sort of the way it's laid out in this, where we watch a ton of Jim Henson stuff and then suddenly just boom, he's gone. We're watching non-Jim Henson stuff that feels somewhat similar, but also very different. And yeah, it's just hard to sort of track.
And the first non-Jim Henson thing has a reworked puppet that you've watched him voice for 20 years worth of stuff, which is also very strange. And the person who's performing him is kind of doing a Rolf impersonation a little bit, I feel like.
It's as if when Jim Henson died, they took the Kermit puppet and gave him a hat and changed his collar to bright red, and they were that's a different character now.
This is Albert.
Yeah, this is Albert, the Toad.
But this internal meeting film character, I guess, was not quite as a golden god as Kermit was. So maybe it was okay that they ripped his nose off and just put a different one on him. But it is very weird.
Yes.
And yeah, I think a lot of it was recognizable to me as the kind of humor that I first probably knew the Muppets for. The more Muppets Tonight kind of manic or something like that.
There's a lot of yelling and talking over each other and just screaming at the camera kind of energy that happens in the 90s of Muppets. But yeah, I think it's just it's bizarre to go from watching all of this Jim Henson content we've been watching since the beginning of this podcast to suddenly watching stuff without him or Frank Oz in it at all. And to not only not have their voices, but not have their sense of humor there, and then also to not be able to recognize the voices as immediately because it's not just Jerry Nelson, Frank Oz, and Jim Henson. It's all these new people coming in, either from Sesame Street or from other Muppet projects, and it's oh, yeah, it just feels like the puppets are familiar, but the people underneath them are not. But speaking of those Muppet meeting films, Sam, tell people what they are.
In 1965, at the height of Muppet Inc.'s commercial making and Jimmy Dean show power, IBM hired them to make some internal films for company meetings and presentations, stuff like that. So the first thing we watched was one of those. It features Rolf writing to his mom about his new job as an IBM salesman. So the gist of this whole thing is that he's writing to his mom about how great everything's going, and then over the narration of him talking about how good a job he's doing, he is being a complete fuck up. He drops typewriters down the stairs, blows sales, and doesn't meet his quota. But then the last little segment shows him relaxing on the beach, having sold 400% of his quota because, as it is revealed, his mom bought 316 typewriters from him. They also made the original version of the coffee break machine sketch for IBM, I believe, wherein an early Cookie Monster eats an expensive piece of machinery and then explodes. This skit pops up in other non-IBM stuff a few more times, and we already watched a version of it, I think, for the Ed Sullivan Show. They also made a non-Muppet video for IBM, which is like a short film, sort of, shot in a very similar style to Timepiece about how IBM is the only thing that can save modern civilization from the never-ending wave of paperwork that's ruining everyone's lives. Very, like, weirdly pretentious capitalist art of some sort.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about that one because it's real weird.
Yeah. Also part of the IBM packet were these little coffee break announcing short skits that could be played, I assume, in the middle of long meetings so everyone could go take a coffee break. One features Rolf showing off his new IBM electric guitar that he came up with. The guitar has a built-in coffee cup and coffee dispenser, which segues into him announcing the coffee break. Another one features Kermit giving a boring talk until the beautiful day monster comes and beats him up until he agrees to go on a break. And then another one, an important one, features these two little business guys sitting in a long meeting. One of them is real peppy and excited about the meeting, and the other one is grumpy and thinks the meeting's terrible. Then the peppy one is excited for the lunch and coffee break, but the grumpy one knows that that's going to suck too. So in true Wilkins and Wilkins fashion, the happy one blows the grumpy one up.
It is straight up Wilkins and Wilkins. Like,
Yeah,
even the
same
voices,
everything.
Yeah, it's Jim Henson doing both voices very clearly. Sounds exactly like Wilkins and Wilkins, just like a few years later than Wilkins and Wilkins.
So one way or another, Henson Inc. decided to spin those IBM films off into more generic films that they could sell to any company to play during their meetings. So the first version of this is kind of a weird one, made in 1975, that features a very familiar cast: Sam the Eagle, Kermit, Janice, and Waldorf. And the four of them are sort of like the board of directors of some company, and they're running a meeting and all kinds of wacky stuff happens. They don't have the right names. They're not like the characters we know, because this is a year or so before the Muppet Show really gets going. And then after a few of those, there's a skit that reuses the concept of one of the Muppet Show pitch videos, where this little square kind of guy starts giving a speech about how selling stuff is so cool and it rules. And as the speech goes on, he starts kind of like going freaking bananas, screaming about selling stuff and destroying the competition and like ripping his clothes off and screaming. Then after that, a dream team kind of coalesces. So the grumpy guy from the IBM coffee break commercial who got blown up, sort of like a reworked version of him, and then the guy from the last part who was screaming about selling stuff, come together in a series of ads. They're now called Grump and Leo, and they are the stars of the meeting films for like the next 20 years. So they're like Bert and Ernie plus Office Space. So they deal with like loudmouth bosses and bad commissary food and uncooperative technology and kind of like all the regular stuff an office person would deal with. And there are a freaking lot of these. This is like an hour and some change of this thing that we watched. So I won't go into any of them here except to say that there is one where Jim Henson as Leo raps about how much he values his employees, and that was something that I feel like maybe I never had to see, but I did see it.
Yeah, that's the one I would say. We'll tweet out a link to sort of a compilation of these that you can go watch. And if you're gonna watch only one of these, do yourself a favor. And watch Jim Henson rapping, because it's not a thing that you think you'd ever get to see, really. No. But if you the thing that we'll tweet out, if it's still available on YouTube, because again, these things probably shouldn't be on YouTube, but for now they are. We didn't do it. Somebody else did. Blame them. If you go to an hour and like 15 minutes in that YouTube video, that's like called 42 Muppet Meeting Films, you can hear Jim Henson rapping about sales and about how great employees are. And I understand that this was 1985 and, you know, rap was big.
Was cool.
Yeah, but not when Jim Henson does it. That's if you like. I'm surprised rap didn't just stop existing. They're like, oh, you know what? We thought this rap thing was a good idea, and then this guy did it, and we were like, oh, this is the least cool thing we've ever seen.
Yeah,
let's just bail.
Pull the plug. Yeah. So those go on forever. The Grump and Leo things. Then the next big shift comes in 1992, which is very soon after Jim's death. There's a new batch of films with new characters and, for the first time in commitment history, Jimless content. So some of these are a little bit more elaborate than they have been in the past, featuring things like cavemen learning how to be the first salesman and overly bureaucratic executives who are stuck on a desert island and can't agree on the right way to get off of the island while all of their employees are kind of freaking out around them. In these, kind of like a regular cast starts to emerge. They're all employees at a nameless company under the same boss, who's a guy with a freaking huge head named Big Head. And that's kind of the end. Then that's the end. That's all of them, basically.
Yep.
In a nutshell. But I didn't look up anything else because I didn't want to look up something for 45 years worth of background. I guess during this time, businesses existed. And
during this time, between 1965 and 1993, a lot of shit went down.
Yeah. Capitalism ran unfettered, and people needed videos for their meetings. That's basically what happened in the background.
I did have this moment while putting these notes together and thinking about like sort of the progress of starting off with these IBM films where you have Rolf. It's clearly filmed on film and they look really rough, but they're like fun. And then you have these 93 ones, which are very slick and filmed on video. And I was like, oh, wow, that's only 28 years between those rough early Rolf ones and these 1993 ones. And then I realized, oh, guess what else has been 28 years? It's been 28 years since 1993. So for us, the Muppet Meeting Films ending is the midpoint between this Rolf content and us currently.
Ew. That's weird.
Yeah, like they were as far from that Rolf content as we are from them.
We're old.
We're pretty old.
No, I don't want to be old.
Nope, sorry, Sam. On that cheery note, let's go ahead and talk about some of the things we didn't get to watch real quick. There were other IBM films produced during those early days with Rolf. One where he's apparently playing piano, which is one of maybe the first example of Rolf playing the piano, was in one of those IBM films. He sings My Way, the famous like Frank Sinatra and many other people's song. He also has a sketch where he plays Zodar the astrologer that we don't get to see, unfortunately.
That's too bad.
There's a very good picture on Jim's Red Book of him in like a wizard's outfit playing this astrologer. There's also a country western one where he sings a song about all these other IBM things he's been talking about. And the one I wish we could really find that we cannot is one where there's a giant Muppet robot named Mike from the late 60s or like 1970. And it's just this like room-sized robot with a giant Muppet face named Mike. And it looks really cool in the photo. Yeah, on Jim's Red Book there's some photos, but there is not any video that I could find. But on top of those things that we could not find and could not see because they're probably in some weird IBM vault somewhere, there's another thing out there that must be somewhere in an IBM vault that I want to see so badly. It's another one of these things that I don't know who has it, how we can get it. But in 1969, Jim and Jerry Jewell proposed an idea to fulfill their 1969 IBM contract. And instead of just doing more of these short sketches, they wanted to do a 23-minute film called Rolf In, like Laugh In. But it's basically... it's what they would do with Sex and Violence and The Muppet Show before those things ever came around in the mid-70s. It was going to be a 23-minute film with a bunch of short bits and Rolf doing commentary like in between to keep things flowing. And I say they did this. They made it. We just can't find it. We can't watch it. It exists somewhere. And there was apparently in there a groovy party scene, as described in the notes, where there would be breaks in the music to tell a joke. That obviously became the At the Dance segments that would appear in Sex and Violence and The Muppet Show.
What the hell? So there's like a lost Muppet Show pilot.
Kind of, yeah. Like at least they recycled a lot of ideas from Rolfin
And it was before those pilots, right?
Yeah, that was
69?
1969 that they made
Jeez.
that. So that was 6-7 years before some of these things would come to fruition in places that we've actually seen so far. But they made essentially a pilot back in 1969 without even realizing it.
Wow, what is the point of sitting on that, IBM? Come on.
Yeah, I feel like IBM, if they have the rights to do this, would have a great sort of nostalgic marketing campaign if they started bringing a lot of those things out of the vault.
Uh-huh.
Which I don't know where the early Rolf sketches that we got to watch were just recently re-uploaded to YouTube in great 4K quality. So somebody clearly got that film and was able to scan it just recently and restore it.
Interesting. There's an inside man, perhaps.
But yeah, let's go ahead and get into that early Rolf stuff, which I assume it was. I don't want to assume, Sam. I know it was some of my favorite stuff that we watched today, but I have to assume, you being a Rolf fan, you probably loved it.
You know, it really set the bar high for the rest of it. That didn't really live up to it. In my
that was
opinion.
kind of in editing together the compilation video I sent you. It starts off really, really strong.
It's it's like Jimmy Dean level, funny Rolf, great writing, all kinds of they do a lot of fun stuff in it, put Rolf in the ocean and have him in real life places, which I remember us talking about probably, and them being worried that when they were making the Muppet movie that the Muppets wouldn't look good in real places. But here's Rolf in a real place, and he looks great. He's kicking back on the beach. He doesn't not look great, but because he looks fucking huge, which is one weird thing.
He is clearly made of a tent to cover two human men.
Yeah,
and so when
there's a part where he's walking up the stairs. He's walking up these stairs with a typewriter to go sell a typewriter to somebody who lives up on the top of the stairs, I guess. And there's a wide shot of him wherein he looks like he is 6 feet tall and 500 pounds, and he's terrifying.
Yeah, if you sort of extrapolated what Rolf's body would look like based on that scene alone, he would just be a giant pyramid of a dog.
Yeah. He would never end. He'd be some kind of Cthulian nightmare of an infinite dogness.
Yeah, you can never find the bottom of Rolf.
Yeah, so that was scary.
But yeah, those first Rolf ones are in 4 segments. We have 3 parts and a conclusion. The first one just has Rolf writing the letter to his mom to say, "Hey, I become a salesman." What I liked about these is it is, like you said, just the Jimmy Dean humor of Rolf being cute and charming. But they will have these little moments where he's talking to his mom about how good of a salesman he is and how much the boss likes him. And they cut to what I guess would be the actual boss, the actual
the real guy,
CEO of IBM, either saying that what, we hired a dog? Or not remembering who Rolf is. And there's a lot of...
I hate that guy, basically.
Yes, it's a lot of Rolf telling his mom that he's well respected in the company. He's a great salesman. The boss loves him. And then cut to the boss being like, who? What dog? We hired a dog? Why would we hire a dog? But what I like about these, I think there's just a lot of little moments throughout them that are really charming and cute. One of my favorites is that at the end of each one, Rolf pauses to reread what he had been typing that whole time. And so at the end of each one, there's just a moment where Rolf puts his hands together and scans the paper just okay, yeah, that looks good.
I like the part where he's making TV commercials in his basement that are ostensibly bad commercials, but they are exactly the same kind of commercials that the Muppets were making at the time.
Yeah, it's so good. That's in the part 3. Rolf is trying to prove his worth to IBM, and he's like, "I'll make commercials for you." And he makes essentially Wilkins and Wontkins ads. They're bad commercials, but you get this meta thing where Rolf is using a film camera and recording commercials. At one point, there's 2 Rolfs. Somehow he cloned himself to double his speed.
The gag with the typewriter falling down the stairs and it falls for 2 minutes is very funny.
Yeah, you mentioned that it's creepy because you see him looking taller than ever when he's carrying the typewriter up. It was clearly an idea that they had, which was they probably regretted as soon as they started doing it. It was oh shit, we actually have to carry this typewriter up with the dog puppet. This is impossible. But then yes, they drop it and it falls. It seems 30 stories down the stairs. And there's this great Hitchcock type shot where they're looking up at Rolf as he stares down the stairwell.
So sadly.
And it pulls out and you just see the sad look on Rolf's face. But then we get to the conclusion, and this is where Rolf has entered the 100% club where he hit his quota, so they get to go on vacation. And Rolf is in the pool, he's golfing, he's on a boat, he's playing tennis, he's buried in the sand. And then like we mentioned earlier, he's just in the ocean. I don't know. I like these a lot, but I think that my favorite had to be the conclusion one where they're just putting him in all these weird situations because, like we said, like they had never done this sort of puppets out in the real world type of thing before. And they were just sort of winging it. Like you can tell that like when he's in that boat, Jim Henson just must like be laying flat down trying to hide inside of a boat. And yeah, I don't know. I would love to see the behind the scenes of this one specifically.
Oh yeah, I'd love to see them wading out into the ocean. Definitely.
Yeah, I want to see like the next 5 seconds of footage after they're like got Rolf like bobbing up and down in the waves, and then you see a soaking wet Jim Henson stand up with a Rolf puppet and just be like, "Did we get it? I'm miserable." I also wanted to add that during this time, they weren't just doing like on camera things. They also did a in-person performance with Rolf where Jim, Jerry Jewell, and Jerry Nelson got to go to the Bahamas as part of this like golden circle level of salespeople with IBM. So like IBM
like the
did
same thing Rolf was in.
Yeah, they did like a real one for IBM people in the Bahamas, and they brought along the Muppet people. Apparently Frank Oz didn't get to go to this, which is probably a bummer for him. But in the live appearance, this is quoted from Jim's Red Book, Rolf congratulated the audience, told them about his success selling Selectrics, which is a type of typewriter, and introduced his best customer, his mom. So they had another Rolf puppet there, presumably in a curly gray wig
on. Yeah.
And she in turn offered them some remarkably astute sales advice. Market the machines to women as they are the ones that do the typing.
Great.
Yep. And showed them a Selectric that had been painted gold, decorated with flower decals and tassels, and trimmed with fur. And then Rolf promptly knocked it on the floor, ruining another piece of equipment. There was also a note in Jim's Red Book from this trip that he said he won $75 gambling.
$75 was a lot of money in 1965 or whatever.
Yeah.
Right?
But I like this idea. Again, we've talked about it before, that if the worlds of Mad Men and Muppets could ever overlap, this was another great time that could have happened.
Yep. Don Draper getting really mad at Rolf while he's in Hawaii or something.
Right, like they're like, Don, we're sending you to the Bahamas. You're going to meet with IBM about their new computers. And he's like, great. And then he has to sit through an hour-long puppet show.
So these are this is like another definitely worth watching thing. I think you gotta watch as much Rolf stuff from the 60s as you possibly can because it's all amazing.
Oh yeah, for sure. These are, I mentioned like obviously the Jim Henson rap is a good one to go check out for the novelty of it, but it like, as far as like actually enjoyable things that where you can get like you don't need to care about the corporate world at all to enjoy these. Rolf is just very good. I would definitely check these out, especially the cool like 4K restored ones, because it's watching this old Rolf content in better quality than you will have ever seen it before. Next up, we had the weird IBM ones, which again I think there were more of, but just couldn't sort of track them down. But we had the explosion one, the Kermit giving his speech, the coffee break machine, and then the electric guitar one. They serve the same purpose, it seems like, as the later Leo and Grump ones will, where they're essentially you play them at the end of a long meeting to lead into a coffee break. Is sort of the idea. A lot of these end with, well, it's time for the coffee break. To be fair, it made me really want coffee when I was watching these.
Yeah, I could definitely like feel the sensation of drinking coffee out of like a styrofoam cup.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Like with like 20 people gathered around all waiting to get the same terrible coffee that's been sitting out for 2 hours.
And like a bad little sandwich also.
Yeah. I didn't necessarily want to be in any of these like corporate meetings watching these films, but it was easy to transport yourself there and try to imagine the people around you who would not give a shit about these like horrible tapes that they're getting. Like, I enjoyed a lot of them, but like I'm imagining the 60-year-old guy who's been working at the company for 30 years who suddenly wants to take his break so badly but is forced to watch a Muppet film first.
Yeah, telling him that he's allowed to go take his break.
Yeah. I don't have much to say about the Rolf electric guitar one that you mentioned in your breakdown, but I did like that this is one of those clear examples of like who these are actually for kind of thing, is that he says this electric guitar is part of the new HPD, which is the Hippie Products Division.
Yeah.
And he says to the workers that some of you will be transferred there shortly. Don't worry, you'll have enough notice to grow out your hair. Which is, again, just like knowing who works on the Muppets and like them making fun of hippies is clearly like playing to their audience more so than their natural sense of humor.
Something that they really believe in.
Yeah.
Yeah. That probably got a big laugh, though.
Oh, for sure. I think those buzz cut astronaut looking men in the 60s were like, hippies. And we also had that the coffee break machine one, which is, again, essentially exactly the same as the Ed Sullivan Show one that we saw when we watched all those TV appearances. I think the timing's a little bit off in this one, weirdly enough, that like this one isn't live, but it just is not as good as the Ed Sullivan performance.
Yeah. It almost feels like they screw up in part of it.
Yeah.
Or like there's like a cue that's wrong or something. He's not eating the part of the machine he's supposed to be eating.
Yeah, because there's a point where the voice just like stops talking for like 10, 15 seconds.
A long time. Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, okay, it's still going though.
Yeah,
and
Frank didn't eat this thing fast enough. So.
Yeah, he's not at his. He missed his mark a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was interesting to see. I think some of those be reused, both in like Ed Sullivan things, but also we'll talk about it. They get completely remade later on in the 80s. But yeah, I think that's like it serves as a very clear transition point from the Rolf stuff into what becomes the actual like Muppet meeting films. Like these are like sort of that middle ground there where it's like, okay, we're making things for corporate America, but we're still going to have some of our familiar Muppets in it. Yeah, it's kind of a weird transitional time.
Well, and it's kind of like IBM asked us to make these.
Yes.
And they want this certain amount of stuff, and we're working with David Laser, and he like has specific things he wants we have to make something generic for every business to buy.
For sure.
Which is a little less fun.
Yeah. But in between those two types of things, we have maybe the most bizarre piece of media we watched this week from 1967. It's The Paperwork Explosion, which is the short film that Sam mentioned earlier, where it's just about you got to keep up with all that paperwork, guys. You know?
You sure do.
The mid-'60s, paperwork's getting out of control.
You got to be more like this weird old farmer, maybe, or less like the weird old farmer. I wasn't really clear.
I'm not sure what the farmer had to do with any of it, but he was there.
So it's like a quick cut. It's Jim's favorite thing, quick cuts, which he had just made Timepiece, I think, like the year before or the year of this. So he was still on that boat of quick cuts, and it's like a bunch of businessmen. He like clearly got a bunch of people at IBM to say the same lines, and then he cuts them all together in like a very jarring way where they're like repeating things and it's like the same person, like three different people saying one line, but then interspersed is like this weird old farmer man who's talking about how modern world's just too fast or something like that.
I wrote down some key lines from this that stood out. One was at the beginning, they're saying, there always seemed to be enough time and people to do the paperwork. And now there's not. Like they were just like very clearly like, we used to have a handle on this, but now it's getting out of control. So we need somebody to come in and help us handle this paperwork. And IBM is clearly the best one to do it. And one, I think it is interesting that like this comes so soon after Timepiece, and it's all about being obsessed with time and the quick cutting and the similar style
and clock, like images of clocks every now and then.
And the main sort of droning repeated thing that happens at the end is machines should work, people should think. Basically, like you let the machines do the work for you so that you have more time to think and be creative. Which is a fine sort of message, but like when you're doing it in this repeated robotic way, it makes the people also seem very drone-like.
The not actor IBM people who are doing horrible line reads also. My
favorite is in the middle of that. Frank Oz pops in. And he just like he's disguised as one of these IBM workers as well. And I'm like, wait, okay, one of you is very different from the rest.
Isn't he like the cool guy who's like leaning on a wall,
he is leaning
like, smoking
against
a
the wall.
cigarette?
Yeah.
He's like, I just bought this great new typewriter from IBM.
Yeah. But this one, I think is one of those things where if you just showed someone this and said Jim Henson made this, and they hadn't watched all the stuff we've watched, they'd probably be very surprised and weirded out by this thing. To us, I think this makes total sense.
Yeah, to us, I was going to say it. To us, if you showed this to us and didn't tell us who made it, we'd be like, oh, that's one of those Jim Henson things.
Oh, yeah, I bet he told Mike Douglas all about the editing in this one.
Yeah. I would love to see how that one went over in a meeting as well. And I don't know what context you'd even play that in. It was like a commercial, but it was way too long to be a commercial. So I guess maybe you'd play it for your sales prospects or something like that.
See, I had this thought too while watching it, but I wonder if this went over really, really well. Like, I think you're talking the mid-60s here, and you do this kind of editing and like this kind of thing that wasn't being done.
Yeah.
I could see this maybe
right.
being so sort of like stylized that people just respect it and like it because it's so different from anything else they've been seeing. Whether or not it's actually good objectively, they're just like, whoa, that was different.
And it does maybe tie into the thing like I think we talked about in like the first episode or something, where the market that they were trying to sell to in like the late 60s was like young people with lots of money who had never known strife or something like that. So and who were like more progressive. So I guess the people who were maybe buying typewriters at that time would have reacted better to something like that. But I could see them showing it to like a 50-year-old who's like in charge of the secretarial pool, and then she'd be like, "What?"
Yeah, like, so what do you guys sell? Like,
I thought it was very pretentious. It was like pretentious in the
absolutely.
name of capitalism, which is not a good combination.
And I think that's a lot of this stuff sort of has that stink on it.
Yeah.
And a lot of
really
this stuff
does.
has this sort of like, well, we all know because we're in the loop here on this corporate speak. So that brings us up to the Leo and Grump segments, which again run from 1975 all the way through 1987, which I think one of the most surprising things for me was that these stay so consistent in that time.
Yeah.
That like over this 12-year period or whatever, they do not seem that different from start to finish. Like, yeah, I think you could swap the order of any of those and you would not be able to really tell the difference between some of these early ones
you
and
put
some of these later
together like
ones.
a nice little presentation for me of like you laid them all out in sequential order, and I almost didn't believe you that some of them were like, I was like, Matt must be wrong. They must have filmed this one at the same time. Because, yeah, they all look like the same film quality. It's like the same sets throughout like a decade and a half, which is very surprising.
Yeah, the fact that like they had the same Leo and Grump puppets from day one until the end of that. I think they must have just like filmed some of these, shove all that stuff in a storage locker, pull them out every few years to film some more. Because the way these are broken down and the way Sam's referring to that I broke down these things in the edit I gave him, because if you go and watch that 42 Muppet Meeting Films compilation on YouTube, all of them are there, but they're in a completely random order. So you would see like something from 93, then 79, then 82, and it's just all out of order. So I wanted us to watch them chronologically. So I was a madman who went and chronologically.
What is wrong with you?
I don't know. I saw it coming down the road, and I couldn't get out of the way. And so I edited them all together chronologically and made little title cards for Sam so that he could know what he was watching and when it was filmed.
It was definitely Matt at his most Matt-like, which I appreciate infinitely.
Oh, yeah, because my wife even called me out because I separated each of them with a title card, and I made the title card like the same blue color with the same white typewriter font that the Muppet Meeting Films have on them.
It's very professional.
Thank you. Nobody will ever see it but you.
Yeah.
But the reason I did that, not only like so that we could understand the chronological like side of this, but also is because the way these were produced was in batches, and they would do 3 or 4 at these at a time, and you would essentially like buy that batch of videos if you were going to go order these from the company, which apparently I think you can still do. And like one batch of these is like $300 for like 3 or 4 tapes. I don't know how that makes sense. I guess they just like trick big corporations.
Do you think
into
they're
spending
still
this
on
money.
tapes?
I assume so.
I wouldn't be surprised.
I would not be surprised at all if these were still on actual VHS tapes or laser disc
they
or
could
something.
send you like a 40 meg video file, or they could send you 5 videotapes with 6 shorts on them.
Yeah. You just get one a month, just like it's a subscription service. But yeah, when we're talking about these, we'll probably talk about them sort of by segment, and they all have these weird names that don't really matter, but they were all given names. So you would order like the first ones that we'll get to here, pre-Leo and Grump, is from 1975, and it's the Muppet Picker Upper is the name of this section. And this is the ones where we get Janice and Waldorf and Sam the Eagle. And basically they were like, what new puppets have we recently made for Muppet Sex and Violence? Let's use those. Oh, but we can't all perform like multiple characters, so we're all going to be on screen at the same time. Jerry Nelson, you'll be Waldorf this time. And I think that's the main reason why, if you're looking at why these characters are the selected few, it's because they wanted to have Fran Brill, Frank Oz, Jim Henson, and Jerry Nelson all have something to do.
Yeah.
And they each gave them one character to do in this.
And you couldn't have Floyd up there because he doesn't look like he works at a business.
Yeah, you get Business Janice in this, which is very,
very weird,
bizarre, played by Fran Brill, who, yes, is a very different Janice. It's like, it almost feels like, what happened to Janice? That she went from this, uptight business person to stoned out Valley girl.
Yeah, she got into some stuff, you know?
She met Floyd and was like, oh. But I do enjoy these, one because we have familiar characters here.
Yeah.
But there's some nice things about it. Sam sings his own intro song.
Yeah.
When he's coming out, he's like,
he was really good in these.
Yeah. I did notice though with these, it's just in these first 1975 ones. They are clearly doing the thing where you're supposed to have someone in the room interact with the video.
Yeah.
Because Kermit like throws to the person in the room of like, and now introducing, and like looks off camera.
Yeah. And then the person in real life is supposed to be like, thanks, Kermit.
Yeah. Because then like Kermit just kind of walks off and like that's the end of it. And so you're supposed to have someone in the room. It's sort of like when you go to a Disney World ride and you have someone interacting with a screen. And it's like these rehearsed lines, and it's like that, but weirder when you're only getting one side of it.
Yeah, and they're throwing to the CEO of your company who...
Yeah. Oh, thanks, Kermit.
Yeah.
I'm here to talk to you today about Q2 sales.
Yeah.
But yes, finally, we are in the Leo and Grump era, which is starting off with the 1979 Muppet Breaker Upper films. Yeah, these are fine.
I gotta say, I gotta cut through the bullshit here.
Uh-oh.
I hated all of these.
You hated all of them?
I didn't hate all of them. I hated the general feeling of watching them. I felt like I was at work.
Yeah.
I felt like I was at work and somebody at my office was like, I know what'll be fun. Here's a fun little treat for everybody. And it's like, come on.
Yeah.
Don't talk down to me.
No,
that's what I
yes.
felt like the whole time watching these.
I completely agree with you. As fun as some of them are and as like good jokes that are like laid in some of these, I do think there is an overall vibe to these that is very like, I think watching them in the context we watch them in is fun, is a good way to watch them. But if you were at a 8-hour lecture sort of work meeting thing and in the middle of that, you have to watch these little Muppet films, I think you're going to be more annoyed by them than you would if they just said, hey, everyone break for coffee, be back in 10 minutes.
Yeah. And it is like, as much as they're like, oh, being a worker, it's so hard, right? There's so much wacky stuff that happens. It's still like from a management position. It's still like, well, but actually get back to work.
Yeah, and they do a lot to poke fun at either management or the idea of like meetings that never end or this idea that like selling is the most number one important thing. And they seem like they can go up to a certain line of making fun of that.
Yeah.
But then they have to pull it back at the end and be like, well, actually, though, you should still sell because we are a company and we need to make money.
Yeah. So when these first started, all the Leo and Grump things, I was like, oh, these are pretty fun. Because there's like the one with the monkey who's beating him up, trying to sell a banana to a monkey or something like that. There's like the fun the one where he's like playing drums behind Grump while he's trying to give a speech. They have kind of a Wilkins and Wilkins energy to them. And they all, like, throughout the years have the same energy to them. There's just so many of them. And I felt like I eventually started feeling like I was at work.
Yeah, there are a lot. And like you said, there's a lot of the similar energy to them, especially with Leo and Grump, because they're supposed to be these like one-note characters. Like they're supposed to be the Wilkins and Wilkins. It was the same thing when we watched all of those in a row. It just kind of becomes mind-numbing at a certain point.
Yeah.
And that's why like there's a couple where their characters change just a little bit, and I'm like weirded out by that because we do get like 40 of them being exactly the same. But I thought a couple interesting things from this batch. In the 5 Basic Rules of Selling, which is the one that features Quango the Wild Mountain Gorilla from the Muppet Show, John Stone is the narrator in that one. So we have John Stone from Sesame Street, who is like the director of Sesame Street, comes in to be the
yeah.
narrator on
That's weird.
on this. He'll also show up as a narrator in one of these other later ones.
I wonder if he was directing these too, because they do have a Sesame Street. These have like a more kind of Sesame Street quality to them, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't see a lot of information about these as far as like who was directing a lot of them.
They feel like they could be Bert and Ernie. Like you could switch Bert and Ernie in for these characters. And they would
for
pretty
sure.
much be the same.
I think even the very last Leo one that we get to see in 1987, he does an Ernie laugh at the very, very end.
He does, yeah.
It's like Jim Henson forgot who Leo was and was like, I'll just do Ernie. I know how to do that.
His voice, as similar as they are through the decades, his voice definitely does change into more of an Ernie voice throughout it.
Yeah, and Grump sometimes is more Cookie Monster, and then other times he turns a little bit into Animal.
Yeah, and sometimes he's a little Grovery, too.
Yeah, but the one I did like out of this batch the most, I think, is the skateboard one. Leo brings Grump a skateboard and essentially is like trying to get him to move faster throughout the office by riding a skateboard, which was like, I don't know, interesting because skateboarding, I don't know when it really became popular, but I feel like it was not super popular in 1979. Like,
yeah,
I know it was
like really niche if it was.
Right, it was like popular with people who were skateboarding, and it was like kind of a niche thing. But I feel like the 80s and 90s kind of like really broke it out. But I thought what was also interesting about this one is that you could remake this today with a hoverboard. And it would not seem that weirdly out of place in like a corporate Google office where it was like, we all got hoverboards to speed up our walking around the office. And so this was one of the
like
few
5 years too late to be really that funny. It would still be pretty good for people who work in offices. Yes.
Yeah, but this was like one of the few that felt like you could do sort of a modern version of it and still keep a lot of the same jokes, because so many of these are very, very dated.
Yeah, I guess this batch was the best batch to me too.
Oh, interesting.
Because the one where he's selling to the ape is quite funny, I think. And the one where he's playing drums behind Grump is funny just because when Grump beats him up for playing the drums too much, he has to pull that drumstick out of his throat. I really like that too.
See, this is not one of my favorite batches. This is one that I have very few notes on because
I'm actually surprised you can remember them in distinct batches.
Well, so that's why I put them in my notes. Was like by batch, and also some of them have like 3 lines of notes underneath the one, and then other ones have either 0 notes or just David Rudman's in this one. And that'll be like my only note, and I'm like, clearly I didn't like that one enough to really write anything else about it. But the next batch is the 1979 Muppet Gimme a Break batch. The first one is my favorite out of this batch, which is called Meal Break. And Grump gets beaten up by some food that he starts.
Yeah, because he's talking about how shitty the food is, and the food's like, hey, you're shitty.
Yeah, fuck you, dude. So he gets beaten up by a salad and some biscuits and stuff. And I think that's just one for me where the puppetry kind of stands out in an interesting way. That a lot of these are pretty straightforward kind of things. So I think because of what we talked about so far about like they're really repetitive, makes you feel like you're at work a little bit. The ones that I think I've made the most notes about are the ones where the puppetry gets the most interesting.
Yeah, the food puppets were pretty cool in that one.
Yeah. And like in the last batch, I think the skateboarding around, it's funny to just imagine Frank Oz running Grump around the set as if he's on a skateboard when clearly he's not on a skateboard. He does a very good,
have any feet.
Yeah, he does a very good convincing job of like running into walls and breaking shit. And then there's one in this batch that where Grump really has to pee, and Leo won't let him, but keeps dropping all these puns about leaks and streams and water puns and things that would make people have to
flows.
Yes, but yeah, this I mean, it's another Leo and Grump batch. It's another similar dynamic. I didn't find it all that thrilling.
I think the P one was where I was kind of starting to get like. This is when I started to feel like I was at work, because that one frustrated me in a similar way to like I'd imagine Grump was frustrated because he had to go pee, where it just like I think I was being too empathetic and putting myself in his position,
right?
Being like,
whereas I think you're more supposed to like be laughing at Grump. You started to become the Grump.
Yeah, but I got to pee all the time, so I know how it goes. I did like the ones in the next batch. There were some in the next batch that were disturbing.
The next batch is from 1981. It's the Muppet Side Splitter. And the first one, Grump gets turned into a mutant salesman.
Yeah. First of all, it's bizarre for me to think about Jim Henson operating in 1981. That just seems so, like, that time period doesn't seem like he belongs in it to me.
Like he's a little bit, like the 80s in general doesn't seem like the
Yeah.
Jim Henson era, even though they
No.
do a lot of Muppet stuff in the 80s.
Uh-huh.
It just doesn't feel like they should
He's
be.
a 70s man, though. But yeah, he gets turned into a mutant salesman with 4 arms and a gorilla body and huge bulging eyeballs.
And a phone stuck into the side of his head, and his eyes
Yeah.
cannot close, which is funny because none of them can. But his eyes specifically are very wide and open.
They
and-
extra can't close.
Yeah. But the next one I think is one of the best.
The computer one?
Yeah, they have a
I
whole
like
thing
that
about, whoa, computers are wild and offices are getting more and more computers every day in 1981. And so Grump is hungry and really wants to order a pizza. And so Leo tries to show him how he can order a pizza using the computer.
Yeah, with very complicated booting all kinds of shit and floppy disks and stuff like that. But that one is funny because Grump is like, Leo tells him all the instructions and then Grump's like, this will get me a pizza? I like that. That made me laugh. Then I love at the end when Grump just like does it his own way and the computer opens and there's an Italian man inside.
Yeah. I wrote down this line of dialogue here when Grump just suddenly gets frustrated because the computer basically says like operator error. Like the person at the keyboard is doing a bad job. So it's not going to work. And so he takes over and is like, screw this, I'm going to get pizza. So he starts typing and he's like, boot the system, invoke Papa Luigi, download the mozzarella, format the pepperoni, patch the marinara, poke the linguine, and that works. And an Italian man and a stereotypical, like the guy on pizza boxes with the chef's hat carrying a pizza, that's who it is. He comes out of the computer.
Doing the worst Italian accent I've ever heard in my life.
Yes. But it works.
So yeah, that one is good. Maybe some of them are better than I was giving them credit for.
It's when they get clever with the puppetry, I think, is when they stand out, as opposed to just like, oh, they're in a boardroom showing slides on a screen. Ha 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 ha. Moving on, 1983 brings us to Muppet Breakthrough, where we have another batch of 4 here. Yeah, again, the one that stands out to me most from this batch is called The Sky's the Limit. And this is an interesting bit of puppetry where the audience of workers all have balloons for heads. And Leo gets up there and starts inflating their egos. And as he does, their balloons' head starts to swell. And at the right time, they all start to float away through the sky. And I was just kind of amazed at the timing on these and wondering like how many times they had to film this, because all these balloons are blowing up at the same time. None of them I don't know.
Pop.
Right. None of them pop at the wrong time, and like they don't fly away at the wrong time. And it just seems like a lot of stuff to orchestrate. Whereas a lot of these other ones feel like they could have done 1 or 2 takes and probably nailed it. This one feels like they probably had to try 10, 12 times before getting it right.
I guess thinking back on it, on like some of my criticisms of the later like late show appearances of Muppets and stuff, it didn't feel like they were trying that hard. But weirdly, a lot of these do feel like they're like trying weird new things like they would have tried in the commercials before. So it's kind of interesting how these are a little bit maybe more of a creative outlet than like they're taking the opportunity of making these boring videos to try some new stuff.
Yeah, I think this is sort of that outlet that they had in the 60s with their commercials, where they were doing so many commercials throughout the 60s. That they could do these kind of weird things with like sacred characters that they didn't need to keep like a canon running really throughout the and I know we had talked before about how it was interesting that once they started doing things like the Muppet Show and Sesame Street, they kind of stopped doing commercials. Like they just weren't doing them anymore. But clearly this is what sort of took over as that outlet, but also presumably as a good moneymaker. Because I know that the commercials were such a big deal because that made them a lot of money that they could then put into other projects. And I have to assume the reason for doing these Muppet Meeting films was just like another source of income, that like every couple of years they make another batch and make another, I don't know, $100,000, whatever it would be back then, and just use that to fund the next years of things.
Well, in that Entertainment Tonight interview we watched, so we watched an Entertainment Tonight video from not too much longer after this, where they are actually interviewing the puppets from the shorts, and Leo does mention that most Fortune 500 companies are clients of theirs.
Right.
So I would assume that they're making shitloads of money from just selling these like film reels or whatever they're doing.
Yeah, and especially because Jim Henson was such a good businessman, I have to assume that it wasn't just like a one-time upfront fee. I have to assume he was making like a percentage of all of these being sold.
So I think actually my favorite one was in this batch. For some reason, I really liked the one where Grump was running the AV for Leo's
I
speech.
hated this
you
one.
Did? And he had all the different
acronyms, initialisms.
Acronyms. He had
Yeah.
all the different acronyms that were funny, and like the walls were opening up with like the different words, and Grump was like running around trying to make the projector go and like doing the slides for him. I just thought that one was kind of, I don't know. I liked their buddiness in that one.
I think what threw me off on that one is that Grump suddenly is a different person, essentially.
Yeah.
Like he's suddenly the incompetent assistant as opposed to like this
I feel like
colleague.
over the years, Grump has come around to being more of a bumbler at this point, but I don't know. They're like firmly friends at this point. They've come a long way from when Proto Leo literally blew Grump up.
He did
nothing.
explode him.
Yeah.
Although he's gonna explode him again in a couple years.
He will. Maybe like one of the last things they do is he explodes Grump. So
Yeah.
he kills his friend.
In 1985, they made the Muppet Perk Up batch, which includes a half-minute manager, benefits, and Nobody's Perfect. What's interesting about this segment is Kevin Clash starts to perform with them in this batch, and he's the guy who will go on to be the first Elmo performer, the first like actual when Elmo becomes Elmo performer.
Right.
But also we get a couple things that sort of feel familiar as far as Muppet things go. We get one in here, the Nobody's Perfect sketch, which is just like all the old whatnot face Muppet jokes we used to have where they would go on a talk show and they would replace the facial features on a Muppet and change the personality of that character. And we get that in here where they're trying to make the perfect salesman. And so Leo and Grump are rearranging the facial features on this whatnot Muppet, and it's becoming all different types of characters throughout that sketch. I think the main thing for me in this batch that I started to notice, which I think happened a little bit in the last batch, but really starts to like kick off with this one, is that they're starting to introduce a lot more characters.
Yeah.
All these ones before this were mostly Leo and Grump and some background characters who didn't really do anything. But with this batch, they're starting to introduce new characters who have new personalities, who are more interactive with Leo and Grump. In the half-minute manager one, we get Frank Oz playing a character named Kent, who is a half-minute manager who comes in and just solves problems in 30 seconds. It's not that great of a sketch. Like the joke gets like you get it pretty fast, and you just kind of like, all right, let's just finish this and move on. But the fact that like that's a whole new character. It's the first time Frank Oz is doing a character that's not Grump in these. Then there's one about benefits in the middle here where they interact with the audience at this for the first time, as opposed to like just giving a lecture to a faceless audience. They are interacting with people in the crowd. And so I think that's maybe why this section stood out to me more so than anything, is like not necessarily because I love these sketches more, but because they're starting to change these in a way that, weirdly enough, transitions better into the 90s stuff post Jim Henson. But obviously they did not know that they were going to need to do that.
Yeah.
But like having more than just Leo and Grump be a part of these things makes it a little less jarring when we get to the 90s and Leo and Grump are no longer around.
Yeah, but the David Laser Muppet continues in past Leo and Grump, right?
Yeah, so
He
maybe
pops up a few
in
more
canon
times.
he fired Leo and Grump.
Yeah. Well, Leo killed Grump and went to jail.
I like that idea.
I don't remember benefits at all.
Benefits is where they're talking about Double Cross and No Shield, which is the healthcare.
Yeah. I do remember that.
And basically they're telling you that the health insurance doesn't cover anything, or it covers these under a very specific day, or like there has to be a full total eclipse of the sun on a full moon and this.
I think I didn't write anything down because I was watching that one like, what the fuck? This is real.
Yeah, that's the thing is like, the healthcare system does suck. And like many people are upset about their healthcare plan. The people watching that in the big meeting were probably like, yeah, this is too true.
It actually doesn't cover that.
In the next batch, though, we're into 1985 with Muppet Lift Off. This one features the famous rap one that we talked about.
Oh, baby.
Which, again, just go check that out because you need to at least see it once in your life. And we also have in this one the first sort of parody that we have seen in these with The Safety Zone.
Oh, I hated this.
Yeah, it's not very good, but it's interesting.
It's a Twilight Zone, except about office safety.
Yeah, that's about it. That's pretty much it. There's nothing really interesting about it other than they tried to do some sort of parody. And next we get the 1987 batch Muppet Coffee Break, which I think is one of the more interesting batches, not because they're great, but because they're all three remakes of the early IBM films. We get the explosion, which is just Leo blowing up Grump. We get Leo and the monster, which is the same as Kermit with the Beautiful Day monster. And then we get the coffee break machine, which is the same as the coffee break machine, just like a little bit more like technically impressive.
Yeah. I don't even know if better. I don't know if any of them are better. I think the monster beating up the guy one is a little better than the Kermit one because he gives him a great body slam.
And there's also a moment where Leo ducks behind the podium and comes up and his eyes are different and he's like bug-eyed. And they clearly like swapped out his eyes or the puppet, one of the two, while he was behind there.
So that's a pretty good one. And that monster puppet's pretty good too. I like that guy. Yeah, the coffee machine one almost they like make the machine more into a coffee machine in a way that makes sense. Like he finds all the beans and eats the beans and goes nutso, and that's why he eats the rest of it.
Yeah, I think it's more technically interesting because there's water squirting out of it and bubbling and all this stuff. And so there's a lot going on, but I think it's still just like, I don't know, the timing, the joke kind of falls a little flat.
You don't need to, you can do that. You did that skit perfectly well with one camera angle, one continuous shot of this puppet doing this thing. There's
a very hard edit in that one that to me kind of ruined it because it's one of those where the edit was clearly to solve a technical problem. It wasn't just to cut to a different angle or to a close-up or something like that. This was like a jump cut where the monster's reaching for something and couldn't pick up the coffee cup or something like that. So they do a hard cut and suddenly it's like in his hand. And I was like, oh, that's kind of a bummer that like you couldn't have hidden that in some better way. But yeah, I think it does not work as well as the earlier version we saw. And again, the people seeing this probably didn't see that earlier version.
And the coffee break explosion one is kind of in a similar boat where like, but more like at this point, Leo and Grump have been friends for so long that to see him blow Grump up was genuinely a little bit disturbing to me. I was kind of like, come on, man. This is your buddy.
It is very out of place.
You haven't been violent to him in 30 years.
Yeah,
so.
We don't see any violence or any sort of like Henson, like, I mean, I guess he gets beaten up by food, but he doesn't get exploded to death.
No, not by his best friend.
Yeah. And then we had the last batch of Jim Henson Muppet Meeting films, which is 1987's Muppet Breakaway. I literally have zero notes about these because they were kind of all unremarkable to me.
This is the one where there's like a lawyer. I thought that one was kind of fun.
Yeah, there's
the lawyer's telling Leo how to say that they're going on a coffee break, and he's like, we're going on a beverage of indeterminate type break. It will be an indeterminate temperature. That kind of thing. Yeah, you can't say the coffee's hot. You can't say it's a 10-minute break. You can't say all these things. And so at the end, Leo gets upset and says, like, I'm going to pull your suspenders and throw you through a wall. Yeah, and then he does, which is also, Leo's got some issues he's working through, which is why he was let go from the company briefly after, or like pretty soon after this. Yeah. And you know what? I don't think Grump's in that one, is he? I don't think so. Grump's dead, man. That's the end of Grump. R.I.P. Grump. But sadly, in real life now, R.I.P. Jim Henson, because now we move on to the 90s era, which they only did these for a couple of years in the 90s, but they put out a lot in 92 and 93. And this is post-Jim Henson, as we mentioned multiple times before. It's our first post-Jim Henson content that we've talked about so far. And it's almost immediately apparent that something is different here in the land of Muppets. All the voices are different, for one. Yeah, you lose your two main characters. Frank Oz does not return in any of these to be any characters. Could not find any info on exactly why, but he is not in any of these. But instead we get Dave Goelz, we get Steve Whitmire, Jerry Nelson sticks around for some of these, Joey Mazzarino, David Rudman, Peter Linz, Camille Benora, Noel McNeil, who is Bear in the Big Blue House, and Julianne Boucher. Sorry if I'm saying that wrong. But yeah, I think clearly you get a lot more Steve Whitmire and David Rudman immediately. I have a harder time recognizing a lot of the more recent voices just because we're not as familiar with them as Jim and Frank. But I heard modern day Scooter a lot in this, which is David Rudman, and I heard a lot of Bean Bunny and Rizzo coming through, which is a bit of Rizzo, yeah, definitely. So Steve Whitmire is definitely in these as well. But you do then there's also some like final voice Gonzo, like what he right.
Yeah, Dave Goelz is in this very first post Jim Henson one, playing an assistant named Smurdley.
Yeah, who sounds like the Gonzo that we have not heard quite yet in the Muppet
Yeah, he
Show,
sounds
but,
just like modern day Gonzo, pretty much. And then that one, the boss, who, as we mentioned earlier, is a recycled Leo puppet. They just swapped his hair and his nose out. Is being voiced by Steve Whitmire.
He went on the run from the police for the murder of his best friend. He got plastic surgery, worked his way up to top of a different company.
Yeah, again, he's changed his name to J.P. Braithwaite.
Yeah,
Braithwaite. And then he murders Smurdley.
he sure does. He almost kills himself.
Yeah.
Then he pushes Smurdley out the window instead.
Yeah, we definitely get some darker humor almost immediately. As soon as Jim Henson is out of here, we get darker humor from the Muppet world. So I don't know if this is something that like Jim was against and they were like, this is our chance to do some darker stuff. Or, I mean, not that like Jim Henson would obviously blow up characters and kill them off, but there's something into the tone of these 90s ones that is different and darker.
I wonder if it's almost more of a case of like he's just not there to gut check things like he used to be.
Well, I think it's
or
also...
that whole team isn't there to gut check stuff like they used to be.
Yeah, and I think now that I think about it, I don't think it's a darkness. I think it's a cynicism. I think there's a slightly more cynical feel to the 90s Muppet stuff that was not there previously.
And this is when we meet the boss with the really big head.
Yes, we have Big Head, who is performed by David Rudman as well, who is just he's a big purple head man who just barks orders at people.
Maybe one of the most distressing Muppets we've seen so far, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't like that his like body is a lot smaller than his head.
His big old head.
It's very weird that like he has this very big round head that just like leads into these normal sized shoulders. But one of my favorite Big Head moments is in the 1992 Muppet Mayhem batch, which is a segment called Blinded by Research that I thought was really well done, where the two employees are pitching to Big Head and they like, we did research, we did a poll of like, would people rather be stabbed in the eye with a big stick or covered in acid? And stabbed in the eye with a stick won by 93%. So we should start selling sharp sticks to stab people in the eye. And there's a really great little commercial for the Sharp Stick 3000. That's just like, if you've tried other sticks, they're just pointy pieces of wood.
Yeah, and you see this like stick rotating in the air above you, and it is distressing because it's like slowly getting closer to you, and then at the end of the commercial, it like stabs into the camera. That's pretty good.
And then the other ones in this were the great moments in business history with the cavemen, and then Think Bigger, which was the debut of Big Mean Carl.
Oh, that, okay. I recognize that name that you say it. There was that monster, and I was like, I know that freaking monster.
Yeah, it's Big Mean Carl, who will show up on Muppets Tonight and the newer Muppets stuff. In this, he sounds completely different, though, because he's performed by Dave Goelz.
Right.
And he will change drastically later on. But what did you think of the cavemen sketch?
I liked it, I guess. There's something about putting that kind of thing on a pedestal. It's like, this is the most important. Business is the most important development humankind has ever come up with. These felt a little bit more like Craven to me, though, or something. These felt more like the creative spark of some of the earlier ones where they were like trying fun new stuff, and it's like kind of these two characters for some reason you love a little bit, or like have gotten to know, aren't there anymore. And it does feel more like we're making this for corporate America. It's very clean and very slick. I guess the slickness maybe is what threw me off of them a little bit, but they were very well done. And maybe then just that feeling of like later day Muppet stuff where it's a little bit like one step removed from what you liked about it in the first place was also there.
Yeah, I found myself getting a little bummed out and sad during this section as well, but for a different reason. Which was in the Think Bigger sketch, which is a bunch of like Muppets, they're all Muppets. It was a bunch of Muppet monsters all around a table talking about ideas. We get a little puppet come in that sounds just like Rizzo / Bean Bunny, and it's Steve Whitmire. And that puppet's actually recycled from Little Muppet Monsters, which we will be checking out later on in the 80s, I think, or early 90s. But it made me sad that with Steve Whitmire gone from the Muppets employee list when he was fired from being Kermit, we have not had Rizzo anymore since then.
Really?
Yeah, nobody has taken over the role of Rizzo. And so looking forward to like Muppet Haunted Mansion and all these things, they've elevated Pepe to like Gonzo's sidekick for everything now. and Rizzo's just not there, which is so
that's
strange
not
to see. Like after the 2015 show where like Pepe, Gonzo, and Rizzo were like this team, to just suddenly like Rizzo is gone. It's very bizarre that like we just don't have Rizzo anymore.
That's really sad.
Yeah.
So he's not going to be in the Muppet Haunted Mansion, or
I don't think Rizzo has been in anything since 2017 when Steve Whitmire was fired.
Wow, that's grim. I love Rizzo.
Yeah, I just ordered because I thought it was really funny. I was ordering something else Muppets through Zazzle where you can like get custom things, and I got a Rizzo mouse pad, which. Yep.
That's stupid.
Yeah. I don't disagree, but I still think it's really funny. Then the last 3 batches here, which we can kind of just talk about in one big go. We watched a little teaser where it's this boss puppet who is purely called Gimli's boss because that's who he plays in one of these roles. It's him and what is known as the lunch counter monster, which is the big monster who is in the coffee break machine sketch, pitching to the camera of like, hey, you should buy these videotapes because they're good.
And it's also kind of the same as the Kermit skit where the Beautiful Day monster is trying to get him to hurry up by physically threatening him.
Right, yeah. And then I think it's interesting. The first appearance here in 1993, we have the batch called Muppet Breakout, and one of these is a pretty strong sketch called How to Sell, where the boss, Gimli's boss, is interacting with Gimli and teaching him how to sell. And Gimli is going through this door that they've got set up and doing a bunch of different kinds of sells. He has the hard sell, the soft sell, the sad sell, all these things. And one of them is the corporate mascot sell, and he shows up with Kermit. You know, just Kermit standing there to be the corporate mascot. One other thing about these batches is that boss puppet will be reused in a show called Statler and Waldorf from the Balcony, a web series from 2005 that I'm hoping we can watch and track down. It was on movies.com back in the day. And it was basically like an Ebert and Roper or Ebert and Siskel like kind of thing, where it was Statler and Waldorf talking about movies that were coming out,
like reviewing real movies.
Yeah, and I think they were like talking. Like there was one example where they're talking about like the Hudsucker Proxy, and I'm like, I want to see Statler and Waldorf talk about the Hudsucker Proxy.
Cool. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know if those are still. I have to assume somebody saved those. They're not that old.
Yeah.
So we can watch some great 2005 web content from the Muppets. But they apparently reuse, I think, both Gimli and Gimli's boss, and I think also the weird puppet who finishes off the Muppet Meeting films with the win-win-win sketch.
Oh, yeah.
He gets reused as a weatherman on Statler and Waldorf from the Balcony. I think these last 2 batches almost feel like the most soulless to me.
Yeah.
I think the only real standout moment to me, aside from Kermit showing up, was in the Top 10 Reasons to Take a Break sketch where they're doing like a David Letterman parody badly. One of the things they say that like you can use to as a sign of when it's time to take a break is when corporate resorts to using puppets as gimmicks, which I thought was a very good little meta joke where they show a puppet using a puppet to communicate.
That one was maybe my least favorite of the whole thing. The Top 10 Reasons to Take a Break. I just didn't.
See, I think the win-win-win for me was one.
Oh, that one's awful.
I think it was the worst one, but also the worst one to end on because it's a bad version of the excited sell, win. Like it's just it's trying to be that chaotic Jim Henson Leo character from the pitch reel and from the sell ones, and it just does not work at all.
Yeah. Then the last one is extremely baffling. The actual last one.
The last one, which apparently was sold as a Muppet Meeting film in the 90s for some reason, is just a sketch from the Muppet Show. Yeah, why do you think they picked this one?
Well, I guess, so it's called Teamwork in Action. And it's all these people in the library like chewing their gum too loud and like tapping their pencil too loud. And then the librarian conducts them like a symphony. So I guess you would watch it and then have like a breakout group where you were like, what do you think Teamwork in Action looks like for your team? And then you have to go write down like 10 ideas and then forget that you did it 5 minutes after the meeting was over is probably why, I guess. And maybe it was part of a bundle of other, like, I wonder if some of these were just like the samples of a bundle of even more of this kind of stuff that maybe just doesn't, like, nobody has ever seen, or like just really does just exist in businesses and has never been leaked otherwise or something like that. But I can't imagine you just get a tape with this one little clip from the Muppet Show on it.
Yeah, I don't know. It is bizarre that they that they chose this one because it doesn't really have anything to do with business.
Working.
And two,
library is the opposite of business.
Yeah, and that they would go back 20 years to pull a clip from the Muppet Show and be like, yeah, you want this? Here, give us money.
It also was weird to me that Nigel is in this one.
Being the grossest.
Conductor.
He's just smacking. Yeah, okay, I see where you're going. That's a good point.
He is a conductor, but he's being conducted by another conductor character in this.
Yeah.
And he's back in his old clothes from Sex and Violence. So I don't know what the hell's going on here.
Yeah, we'll get to that sketch eventually in our watching of the Muppet Show.
Yeah.
I think it's a season 2 or 3.
I think it's a season 1.
Oh, is
it's
it?
It's a Moomin-Chan.
Ooh, that's going to be a fun episode. But yeah, it's it's kind of a bummer that these Muppet Meeting films start off so incredibly strong, watching the IBM Rolf stuff, and end with just the whimperest of whimpers, with this win-win-win impression, one that sucks, and then this Teamwork in Action, which is just a weird Muppet Show clip. And it's just it doesn't feel as bad as you might feel while you're watching some of these because of the business corporate vibe that's making you feel like you're at work. The fact that it just ends in this very unsatisfying way makes it feel like it was an even bigger waste of your last 2 hours.
Yeah.
Well, because you start watching this 2-hour batch with Rolf and you're like, yeah, I'm in. Let's do this.
Yeah.
And then by the end, you're just like, dear God, let it end. And now let's head on over to talk about our Muppet of the Week.
Somebody who's never worked a day in her damn life.
This week's Muppet of the Week is Janice, because we saw her.
Yep.
She's in these.
She said 2 lines
in the first
in the
batch.
wrong voice.
Yeah, we get Business Janice, played by Fran Brill. But we've also seen Janice before, obviously, on The Muppet Show and on Sex and Violence. So I wanted to talk about her today. Janice, as you probably know, is the blonde-haired, closed-eyes guitar player in the Electric Mayhem. She talks sort of like a Valley Girl voice, like a stoned Valley Girl voice. Though, as we talked about today, she did not always have that voice.
No. We haven't seen her with that voice yet.
No, yes. In our chronological stuff, we have not actually heard that Janice yet. But we've mostly seen her as part of the Electric Mayhem, but she also features in Veterinarians Hospital, as we mentioned earlier, as Nurse Janice, and she shows up, presumably, as other characters in a wig in the first scene of The Muppet Show. She's in the intro theme song as a lady with a big beehive wig, and a couple at the dances, she's wearing a wig, so I guess she's a different character. It seems like maybe she's supposed to be. If you've watched enough Muppets things, you probably know that Janice and Floyd Pepper seem to be in some sort of relationship. It seems kind of sort of on and off at times, sort of like a Kermit and Piggy situation, but maybe more consistent and happy than Kermit and Piggy.
Is it almost unstated? When do they...
I don't know if they've ever said that they dated, but I know at least in the 2015 Muppet Show, it is alluded to pretty heavily that they are an item. And I think we get that pairing often throughout the years. It seems like Janice and Floyd at least gravitate towards each other, if not outright saying that they are dating. Janice's look has changed just a little bit throughout the years. Early on, she still had her giant lips and blonde hair and closed eyes. But she also had this sort of blossom-like hat, this sort of just big hat with a flower in the front. And then starting in the 80s, she lost that hat and started sometimes rocking a ponytail, sometimes a beret, other times just straight blonde hair. She looks pretty much the same since day one. She has not changed a ton. The skin tone has changed a little bit. The hat's changed, but mostly she's been Janice in looks, at least, since day one. As far as her performers go, it's a little bit similar to Scooter in that a lot of people played Janice, and I think, again, because that has to do with Richard Hunt dying. But originally, Janice was performed by Fran Brill in Sex and Violence in 1975, and here in the Muppet Meeting films that we talked about today. And then in the first season of The Muppet Show that we talked about last week, Erin Oscar takes over the role of Janice, but she was only there for the first season. So that is when Richard Hunt took over and started to perform Janice and gave her the Valley Girl persona we know and love. And he would perform Janice up until his death in 1992. So Richard Hunt is really the one who decided and determined Janice's personality as we sort of have seen it ever since then. And yeah, after his death, much like Scooter, kind of just didn't appear for a long time, Janice was not in anything between 1992 and 2000.
Was the rest of the Electric Mayhem and stuff?
I think I'm trying to remember. It's been a long time since I've watched Muppets from Space, but I feel like the Electric Mayhem is in that. But maybe Janice just doesn't have any lines. But as far as I could tell from my research, Janice was last performed by Richard Hunt in 1992, and then is not, like, at least voiced again until, much like Scooter, actually has the same trajectory for the next couple things. Matt Vogel stepped in as the voice of Janice in Muppet Race Mania in 2000.
Good old reliable Muppet Race Mania.
And then also, again, like Scooter, Brian Henson performed Janice in It's a Very Merry Muppet Christmas Movie and Muppets Party Cruise in 2002 and 2003. And then breaking away from the Scooter trajectory, Tyler Bunch takes over performing Janice in The Muppet Wizard of Oz in 2005. And then in 2008 is when David Rudman took over and has been performing her ever since. David Rudman, who we talked about throughout this because he was a big part of the 90s Muppet Meeting films, now does Cookie Monster and Scooter and a bunch of other characters. It is also worth noting that Janice did appear in one episode of Muppet Babies, where she was voiced by
Janice?
Dave Coulier. And I'm going to send you a link here, Sam, to see the nightmare that is Muppet Babies Janice.
Dave Coulier, why? Oh, no. Why are her eyes open? What have they done?
Her eyes are open. She doesn't have the magenta eyeshadow that she normally has, but she still has the giant mouth and looks not great.
She's weird.
Yeah, as far as Muppet Babies character designs go, they didn't nail it on that one.
They kind of missed the mark on that one, huh?
Yeah. But apparently Muppet Babies Janice is a little bit older than the other characters. She's sort of like the Angelica of the group.
Sure.
But nicer. She shows up and reads to them because she's the only one that can read. And then, just a few fun facts about Janice here. She lists Tina Turner and Joan Jett amongst her musical influences. And apparently Weezer and OK Go are some of her favorite current bands.
I don't believe that.
I mean, I think it's partially because they've done videos with Weezer and OK Go. So
she had to say that because they were in the room when she was like,
who are your favorite bands? These guys. In August of 2015, there was some canon established through Twitter where the Electric Mayhem tweeted, Janice truly is a flower child. Her mom's name was Daisy.
Okay.
And that was it. They just tweeted that, and that's never been established anywhere else other than one tweet from the Electric Mayhem, which I guess we have to accept as canon.
Sure. Some intern just made up a bad joke, I guess. And
That. No, I think it's exactly what it is. With somebody who's like, that's funny, right? And they're like, yeah, sure, run with it. And also, it's worth noting that Michael Frith's original drawing of Janice was that she was going to be a dude. The drawing was pretty much
or something.
Yeah, it was kind of blue and mentioned on the sketch says that extremely emaciated. So you were going to see ribs and bones and stuff. And they were aiming for a Mick Jagger look. And they were going to give the giant mouth. There was going to be 2 wispy beard hairs on his face.
Yeah.
And it also said there was going to be an animated Adam's apple, which sounds...
That would have been cool to see how they did that.
Yeah, but it also sounds like the grossest detail to highlight on a Muppet. You just have this little gross thing moving around. I guess that they switched that out and just gave her a uvula instead.
I do like her uvula. That's one of my favorite things about her. Almost nothing from that sketch survived except her lips, basically. Very weird.
Yeah.
I guess she's pretty skinny, too.
But yeah, not emaciated. You don't see bones.
No.
I don't want to see bones inside of a Muppet.
She's just kind of olive oil tubey.
Yeah. But that's kind of it about Janice. That the only family details I could find were that one mention of her mom from a tweet from the Electric Mayhem. But
looks like she's talking to her mom on the phone in The Great Muppet Caper at some point or something, too. So she definitely has a mom. That's what we know.
We can establish that Janice has a mom.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Janice, it was just brought up. I like the design of Janice a lot. I think she looks different from a lot of other Muppets. I think the eyes being always closed, the uvula is a very distinct, weird thing that having a dangly moving uvula in her mouth. I'm sure is a technical thing to figure out of okay, we have to close her mouth and the uvula doesn't just weirdly get crunched in there. What do you feel about Janice?
I mean, the Electric Mayhem's not the Electric Mayhem without her. So there's that.
That's true. She's no lips.
No, she does have lips.
She does have lips.
Which he doesn't have.
Oh, weird.
Explain that one, huh? I don't know what is it. She's great. I like Janice. I feel like she is inadvertently probably one of the most well-known Muppets, which is a little bit like, she's a top tier, I'd say. You show a picture of Janice to anybody on the street and they'd say, that's Janice.
For sure. I think it's partially because there's not very many like female Muppet characters.
That is part of it.
And
There's two.
Yeah, and so it's like, okay, do I relate more to Janice or Miss Piggy?
Uh-huh.
Like, who do I want?
Are there really only two?
There's more. I mean, there's other sort of like
in the original Muppet Show. There's like Wanda and those two, and and Zelda. I suppose Zelda's there too.
You get Hilda. You get what's her face? The purple
There's a
one.
lunch lady at some point, right? Yeah, the purple one.
Clearly, very well established characters that we can think of and name right now. But yeah, there are clearly not a lot, and even the ones that are still around are mostly performed by men. But you have Yolanda, the rat on the Muppets, is a good female character that is performed by a woman. But yes, there are not many. But yeah, also strong agree. Janice is great. Let's see if I'm gonna rate her out of 60. She gets pretty high up there. I'm gonna say 54.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think I'll say. Am I out of 5?
I think you're out of 5.
Sure. I think I'll say 4. The Electric Mayhem as a whole kind of, to me, are one character, like one 5-star character in a way. But
yeah, I think
individually, they're all about a 4.
Interesting how that averages out.
Well, yeah.
A bunch of 4s become a 5.
They're greater than the sum of their parts, you know?
I get that.
Like,
it's like a Voltron sort of situation.
Yeah.
So, Sam, have there been any non-Muppet things you've been enjoying this week?
I don't know. I had a pretty media light week this week. We did watch Rutherford Falls, which I liked quite a bit.
Yeah, it was enjoyable.
Yeah. That's like the only thing I could remember watching. I didn't watch any movies or anything like that. No, I had a pretty light one. Rutherford Falls was good though. If you can figure out how to get Peacock, knock yourself out. How about you?
I finished Space Jam finally.
Oh wow! Like 4 weeks later?
Yeah,
something like that.
Well, HBO Max was like, "Hey, we're gonna take Space Jam off of here, so you should probably watch it if you want to watch it." So
fine.
It went away now. It's not on there anymore.
Oh shit!
Yeah, you missed your chance. Sorry.
How was the rest of it?
So bad. Okay. I just didn't enjoy it at all, really. And I think the story is bad, the writing's bad. The fact that it's just about like bad dads most of the time is not fun. Weirdly enough, though, one of the things I disliked the most about it was the score. And I was like, why is this score so bad? Like, there's moments where it just like sounds like they dropped in stock music. And I looked it up, and at first, my first Google result said that Hans Zimmer did the score, and I was like, no. Apparently, he was supposed to do the score for it, but then was replaced by another guy who hasn't done quite as much as Hans Zimmer has.
Okay.
So yeah, it wouldn't
replaced, or did Hans Zimmer wash his hands of the whole affair?
I don't know. There seemed to be a creative team when they first announced they were doing Space Jam 2 with LeBron. There was like a director, a cinematographer, and Hans Zimmer were like all attached, who people were excited about, and then all of them left the project. So maybe that's a little bit of why it is how it is now. But on top of that, I did watch some other stuff. I watched The Orange Years, which is a documentary on Hulu about Nickelodeon.
Oh,
so it like kind of talks about the beginnings of Nickelodeon in like 1979, and then kind of runs up through the mid 90s of sort of like our era of Nickelodeon, the things we watched. And it has a lot of people from like all that and Pete and all of them like are.
Is that why you were tweeting about Pete and Pete?
That's why I was tweeting about Pete and Pete. I was watching that documentary and had some Pete and Pete ideas.
I read this book. It's a book, right?
I don't know.
I've read a book of interviews from the people who started Nickelodeon. It was very good.
I would say it seems like it would be sort of like a street gang situation where there's a lot of details that they have to gloss over, and some shows they just don't talk about because they don't have as much time. But no, it's pretty good. It kind of is like the first half of it is very like filled with details that you would never know from the early days of Nickelodeon, getting into all this stuff, and the last half is kind of just like they'll say a show, and then 5 people will say something about it, and they'll name another show, and then 5 people will say things about it, and they'll name another show, and it just keeps like going on like that, and then it just ends.
I think the book, I don't think it was a book, but there was a book with a very similar premise. Yeah. But the book is kind of the same way, where it's like the people who started Nickelodeon are like the ones who like just like got the keys and got all the money and it was like, do whatever you want to do. Those people have all kinds of crazy, interesting stories. But then by the time it's like really corporatized, it's just like, then we made SpongeBob. Then we made Rugrats. Or, well, I guess Rugrats
was way early,
interesting. Yeah. But maybe like once it gets to SpongeBob, it's just like, then we started printing money and with all these crazy kids with their wacky ideas didn't have a place here anymore.
Yeah. It's sort of covering that era of pre-corporatization of it.
Sure.
And talking about how they really were kind of just allowed to do whatever they wanted. And in some cases, they use that to like make super gross, weird shows like Ren and Stimpy. And other times they used it to like make Nick News, where they would like talk to Magic Johnson about HIV and AIDS and like teach kids about that shit. And so it's like,
and like hire like a legitimately like great journalist to just like
Linda
do
Ellerby.
amazing stuff. Yeah. So I romanticize early cable stuff so much. I don't know how much fun it really was, but it seems like
I think
working
that's
on FX in like 1990 was probably like the funnest thing you could possibly do at the time.
And I think this documentary is right up your alley then, because this is that's all this is mostly about. The first half, at least, is a lot about that sort of early cable and like how they got shows on the air. They don't talk nearly enough about Eureka's Castle. They just like show a couple clips. But it's very interesting, the origin story part of it. The second half, they kind of just do that run through, but it's not as interesting. But next week, we are going to return to the Muppet Show. We will be watching episodes 6 through 10. Again, we are watching them in New York release order, which is confusing if you're trying to watch it on Disney Plus along with us. Apologies, it just makes more sense for our system. But those will be the episodes featuring Paul Williams, Lena Horne, Peter Ustinov, Florence Henderson, and Valerie Harper. And we'll also be checking out a clip of Big Bird appearing on Bob Hope's World of Comedy that happened during the same time as those episodes were being released. So, yeah, return to the Muppet Show next week, Sam.
Phew. I'm happy for that.
Yes, we can get away from this dull corporate meeting world.
Corporate hellscape.
And return to the weird, zany season 1 of the Muppet Show. But before we go, we need to thank our friend Tuna for creating the music for this podcast and Cassie Wilson for singing our theme song. You can follow this podcast on Twitter at CommitmentPod, where you can find the playlist of things we will watch for each episode. You can also email us at mail@commitment.com if you have any Muppet memories or anything else you'd like to share with us. And you can follow me on Twitter at Matthew Gatos.
And I'm Slam Schultz.
And as always, keep believing.
Keep pretending.